All right, we're catching a game of Cliffy versus Forky. This is the fourth game of their match, I believe. Let me count. 1, 2, 3. Yep, this should be number 4. The first one I'm catching. And we had Cliffy clearly started in 1, which looks safe to Forky's hand. And Forky played in 4, which is duly safe to Cliffy's hand. And now Cliffy gets to play safely in 7. The desirable square for Forky to play is 5. If Forky can go in 5, setting up 2 and 8, then he is likely has some advantage here. If he cannot, then he is likely worse. Though in situations where this number of cards have been safe, often there will be additional safety or pseudo safety available. So you could imagine something here like 8A81 in 8, which is not safe. It can get taken by 6-5A7, but that concedes 2-9A6 and 2, which combos back and almost certainly wins. And so I could imagine some move that is kind of almost safe, like 8A81 being an appealing option. There also does seem to be outright safety with 6-2A9 and 3. I am recording this video just after it was pointed out that in a prior video I made about playing against the FF8 AI, that I said at one point, there's no safety here, when in fact there was safety there. 6-2A9 and 3 does appear to be safe, and that means it is the move I would probably predict here as the move to be played. One other interesting thing you can do is you can play in 3 or 9 with the idea of making a threat in 2 or 8. Of course, this threat is terrible because if you make a threat in 1 square and they block that square and that was your only point. But if you have some setup in 5 against that, it can be appealing. I don't think that's very likely here. A more likely option to do something creative is if you had play against any card from Cliffy landing in 5, I could imagine going in 6 and trying to make something fun happen there. Where, now, notably, actually, the card in 4 is not safe. I totally missed that Ellie covers that. Though the point was Ellie gets comboed, potentially. Or 1 point. Probably, I'm saying this really poorly. So if Cliffy had played Ellie in 5, Forky could combo back with 8A8, 1, and 2, but this gets comboed from 3, and you are probably in trouble there. I guess you have a plus back in 6. Rico has a plus in 6. But more likely, if they went in 5 there, you'd just recapture in 4 and leave the combo thread open for later. Not recapture in 4, recapture in 7. God, brain's gone. All right. So anyways, I expect we will be seeing Beardo in 3. I could imagine 8A81 landing in 5. Because that creates a threat in 8 that your opponent will probably feel the need to deal with. And if they go in 8 without capturing you, you might still have some pleasantness in 2. And if they go in 8 with capturing you, maybe you can take that back and hold at the end of the combo chain. Okay, he goes 5 a different way. Now this does set up a threat in 2. I had only considered setting up the threat in 8. But there is the question, what happens if they block 2? And one of the reasons 8A81 had more kind of at least initial appeal for me, I'm not sure that means it was better, is it had a high number facing towards 6. And if your plan here, if they go 2, is to recapture with 8A81 and 8, which is safe, I do worry that the 2 sticking out might make some endgames difficult. Probably not that difficult, though. Yeah, should be fine. So do we think this ties? The natural way to block 2 is with Ellie, because Ellie is safe. And there's a plus in 8 for Cliffy if he wants it at some point. The plus is not important in a combo sense. That's not going to flip any extra cards. But it is important that he has a way to capture there. So say Ellie in 2. Forky's main moves are 8A, 8-1, and 8, or 2-9, A6, and 3. Let's look at 8A, 8-1, and 8 first. That makes it 5-5. But now 6-5, A7 lands in 3. It's 5-5, and 9-5, 5-9 is guaranteed a capture on the final move. Yeah, so that's going to win for Cliffy. And if 3-7-7A is met by 2-9, A6, and 3, you're still up 6-4, but you don't want to play 6-5, Ace. Maybe you can play 6-5, A7, and 6 there. Yeah, this looks very promising for Cliffy. Because 2-9, A6, and 3, if 6-5, A7 in 6, it's still 6-4. And you've set up 9-5, 5-9 to cover 8A, 8-1, and 8. Yes, that doesn't combo through anything, but 8A, 8-1, and 8 doesn't combo through anything either, so you win. The question is, do you win against 8A, 8-1, and 9? And the answer is yes, because that flips 2 cards, 6 and 5, and 9-5, 5-9, and 8 flips 2 cards back, 5 and 9. So this should be... I mean, against the most obvious moves, this is a win for Cliffy. That doesn't mean we've checked everything, though. But it does tell us that anything Forky puts in 3, Cliffy can play the 6-5, A7, and 6. If that works against 2-9, A6, it will work against any other card here, because no other cards have capture capability. And as long as you're doing fine against that card, you're going to win. So 3 is out. There is the question, can another card go in 8? But against other cards in 8, you will still be able to go 3. You will be up 6-4 at that point. They will only be able to flip 1 card back in 5, and you are guaranteed captures with 9-5, 5-9. So 8 is also out. Now, 9 is possible. There are lots of versions of positions like this where you can play a 9, they go 8, you go 6, recapturing whatever you need to, and are safe to 3. But here there is no way to be safe to 6-5, A7. It's not just you don't have a card that is, there is no card that is safe to 6-5, A7. So I think there's no way, unless you have a combo in 6 that uses 5 to flip 8, I think there's just mathematically no way for that to work. The last possible move is 6, and 6 is nothing. Not a serious try. Though actually 6... can make it so there's a number facing out. That means 9-5, 5-9 doesn't have a capture at the end. Actually, 6 is interesting. So if Rico and 6, if 2-9, A6 and 3, that combos through, but then 8A, 8-1 and 8 is safe and flips 5 back. I guess you still lose 6-4, but it's kind of an interesting way to lose 6-4. All right, he goes Rico and 3. Now, my line here was 6-5, A7, and 6, which I stand by. I think Cliffy has won this game. I'm going to start putting it into my database. Looks like a nice win for Cliffy. A tricky random for Forky, to be sure. When your opponent just has multiple safeties they can land, you know, it's going to be tough. But I do like how Cliffy played it. And I think grabbing safety was a good way to get pressure in general. My guess is 8-1, 8A, and 5, or 6-2, A9, and 3 had better chances of holding the tie, but I'm not at all sold they did hold the tie. I don't know for sure at all. All right, we don't have the last few moves. I can check in another window if they posted. We may be able to figure it out. Probably 9-5, 5-9 was played in 6. We know 8A, 8-1 was played in 8. And so we know that Cliffy either played 9-5, 5-9 in 6 or 6-5, A7 in 8. If Cliffy played 6-5, A7 in 8, then Forky would have played in 6, capturing 8 but not flipping 5 with 8A, 8-1. And 9-5, 5-9 does not flip back enough to win. So certainly we saw 9-5, 5-9, and 6. Not the line I gave, but looks probably better than the line I gave. Or cleaner. Or just the same, because they're both wins. Unless I missed something horrible. But this one requires less calculation, I think. So I think 689 is the final move order. That is correct. Forky says he was not supposed to play that card in 3, but I think it was already over. Let's go take a peek with Monsieur Solver. Make sure I have it ready to go. Okay. All rules? All rules. And what are the cards? Sorry, this always takes me a sec. 5A94, 8855, 377A, 9559, and 65A7 versus 5996, 62A9, 9587, 8A81, and 2986. Alright, oops, did not mean to close something. Sorry, I'm really good at this. Just been doing this for years, capable of remembering what to close and what not to. That was a 6-4 win for Cliffy. Okay. And let's boot open. Did I not boot open the solver? Jesus. Okay, we're together. We're with it. Solver. There we go. All right. So my thesis is I think this was winning for Cliffy. There are 2 wins, 2-2 or 2-9. Card 2 is this card. That goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this card in 2, or this card in 9, which I did not consider at all and refuse to consider now. Straightforward. And this did indeed win. After this, either card in 6 won. So I wasn't having a huge brain fart, but the game went with this card. All right, so the question, I guess, is what were the ties here? And my guess for most likely move was here, which did tie. And I also thought this probably worked out better. I liked having the A facing right, but I'm not as sold on this one. This one also ties. You'll notice slightly worse on the tie-loss ratio, but not very different. This is not a major difference. And then there's the question of how many ties were there here. Apparently about half the moves tied. I think this is a hard position to play, though, and I think if you look at this, you'll see why. How many moves in 2 tie? Loses, 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 loses. Okay, no moves in 2 tie. How many moves in 5 tie? 2 moves in 5, 3 moves in 5 tie. So actually this was the one card you couldn't put in 5. That's tough. I mean, this card certainly is power facing the action, but it makes some sense to set up a threat in 2, while something like this does not create any threat, and I think would be a harder move to play. This does create a threat. This does create a threat, so those make some sense. But if we look... What I'm trying to say is if you look where the ties are, it goes 3, 9, 5, 6, 9, 5, 9, 5, 8, 9. Which means 5 had the best chance, 9 had the second best chance, but 9 is a pretty hard square to play. But a lot of the natural moves in 2, 5, and 8 are generally not very good. You didn't hear 8 very much. And generally, the further away from the action moves are that are good, the more they're in squares like 9. The harder they are to find, and also the more varied the options are for where ties are, the trickier it is. So I think this was a pretty tricky position. And the real downside of this was shown very clearly, which is you just didn't have a way to capture, like it conceded safety to Ellie. And that ended up being decisive. Yeah, interesting game. This is a curious way to try to win. So I guess your point is like 6-5-A7 now combos through everything if it wants to, whenever it wants to. And your 9-5-5-9 just has recaptures. Yeah. Alright, interesting idea. I wouldn't have considered 9. I would have played like Cliffy did. And I like how Cliffy played it. Alright, we'll end there. Why is this not... No, I don't want to make that bigger. I want to cut that window slightly. Alright. Yeah. There we go.